Hey guys, what is up? Ncaa31 here. Would you believe, and this kind of stuck up on us, but Twitter, being Twitter, reminded us that this would have been the week that if we had a NCAA football game, that NCAA 20 would be releasing. And, that got all the nostalgia kicking. This is such a good game. It's such a really good, fun game to play. One of the best football games that we have had the pleasure of experiencing, arguably the best football game, depending on your point of view. But either way, no one can dispute that this is just a really fun, deep joy of a game to play. Spent a lot of years playing Online Dynasty with a lot of guys, the Operation Sports Online Dynasties, HPL Online Dynasty, the Powerhouse Online Dynasty. And some of those guys have continued to be people who I play in online Madden CFM. Some of them are just strictly college football guys and just play either offline, or there's still a small group of guys that still play in online Dynasty. I think the online Dynasty servers are still active. But anyhow, that got me to thinking about doing a little list of the most unique and most enjoyable playbooks to use in this game. And one of the things that made this game such a joy to play were the playbooks. Offensively, this game had a lot to offer, a lot of diversity, and one of the great things that they did was to, capture various styles of offense that you find in these programs in the college game. I was speaking with Zach, aka Beast Mode for MVP on Twitter, and we were like, the worst playbook in this game would have been a top 5 playbook in the past couple of Maddens, Madden 18, 19, 17, 16, whatever you want to call it, however far you want to go back. They're that good. They just did an amazing job, especially capturing the spread flavor of college football. And what I decided to do, I originally wanted to make a top 10 most unique playbooks in NCAA 14, but that was such a tough task to do to narrow it down to 10 that I'm going to end up doing this in 2 parts and do a top 20. I'll do 10 this video and 10 more in part 2. I'm not going to even bother to rank them because they're all really, really good. If you were in an online random tournament and had to pick a playbook just by a blind draw, you'd feel good out of virtually every playbook that is in the game. You'd be like, okay, yeah, I can do a pretty competent job of offense out of this sucker. Just a really, really brilliant job. So, anyhow, let's get started. All right, first up is Auburn, and I just did these in alphabetical order. Like I said, putting them in 20-1 order would have been too much of a headache. So, first up is Auburn and the good old shotgun wing T. Gus Malzahn's an interesting guy. This is a really good spread to run playbook, and when I say Gus Malzahn is interesting, his offensive philosophy has really evolved rather drastically over the past, well, really since the post-Cam Newton era. He was always a spread-to-run guy when he was at Auburn, but before that, really, he was a guy who loved to air it out. When he was at Tulsa, they had years where they led the country in total offense, both as far as yardage totals, cumulative, and yards per game. They had a season where they had a 5,000-yard passer, 1,000-yard rusher, and multiple 1,000-yard receivers. They were putting up yardage numbers passing-wise right up there with Texas Tech and Hawaii when they were at their peak of the Colt Brennan days. Now, he's always had a obsession with the wing T, back to when he was coaching high school football. And his dream was to morph the wing T into a modern shotgun offense with a play-action passing game and tempo. Now, the wing T is good for that because the wing T is a series offense. Dive, fly sweep, option game, play action off of the dive and fly sweep game, and he uses the bubble screen as the third option in the triple option. I mean, if this game had RPOs, this playbook would have been just bananas. You see all that fly sweep motion with the fly motion HB dive, motion play action, and the motion jet sweep. That's classic wing T series football, and that's all over this playbook. And you can also run in between the tackles out of the gun with power, power read, power buck sweep, inside zone split. And really, that's how they played when they had Cam. They ran much more downhill between the tackles, power, and some counters here and there to keep defenses honest so they don't gang up on the inside run game. And when you have Cam Newton, that can be pretty damn devastating. He's your inside. He was basically a better version of Tim Tebow. He was your inside run game, plus he was an NFL caliber QB. Now, when they had Nick Marshall, same run emphasis, but a little bit different. You had much more of the jet and fly sweep motion stuff, and midline and zone read and triple option RPOs. However, now I think his offense has gotten a little bit out of balance. It still works, certainly, but I think his offense is now to the point where it is really, really heavily reliant on a dynamic, athletic quarterback, and it can't function without that. When his QB isn't a runner, they bog down. They bog down a lot. The passing game isn't quite there because you should be able to get quality receivers at Auburn, at least enough to pitch the ball around. You gotta have it, but for every reason they don't. I get that competition, recruiting skilled people in the South is pretty fierce with Alabama, Georgia, Florida, LSU, Texas A&M in your conference as well. It ain't easy, but come on, get it done. You're Auburn. You're a Power 5 program that's won a national championship and played for another in recent years. Do it. Get it done. Jeez. Anyhow, Boise State. I tried really hard not to make this just a collection of 20 spread and air raid playbooks, but truth be told, the spread playbooks are just better. They just are. Ncaa 14 is a spread-centric game, and it should be. The spread offense in this game is very powerful, and that's how the sport has moved. So it makes sense. However, there are still some good pro-style and multiple style, I guess you could say, pro-style spread West Coast type playbooks in this game as well that I feel are right up there with the spread playbooks in the game, and Boise State is one of them. When Notre Dame hired Mike Sanford away from Boise State, I felt pretty good about it. I thought that Brian Kelly's offense at the time had started to become a little bit stale and needed a injection of new blood. And I felt like Sanford could make them a little bit more multiple formation-wise and less predictable. And it worked pretty well. They had a pretty good offensive season. They were right in the mix for most of the year overall. They lost to Clemson 24-22 on the road, and they got their second loss of the season at Stanford, 38-36. They got bombed by Ohio State in that Fiesta Bowl. But they had a pretty good offensive year. Deshaun Kaiser played well. Will Fuller averaged 20 yards a catch. They ran for a bunch of yards on the ground. They ran for over 2,500 yards on the ground between C.J. Precise and Josh Adams. That was the year that Malik Zaire actually started the year and looked terrific until he got hurt. Malik Zaire looked like a version of Everett Golson that didn't give you a heart attack every other play. But Sanford only lasted one season there, which was a shame. And the reason being was because Brian Kelly in those days was still a bit of a control freak. He did not want to give up control of the offense completely. He forced Sanford into running his system and, integrating parts of what he ran at Boise State here and there, but within the structure of what Brian Kelly had already established. And on top of that, Kelly would control the offense from him. So he didn't really have much in the way of autonomy at all to install his own system. And he said, screw it, I'm just going to leave and go somewhere where I can. I think right now he's head coach at Utah State. He was at Western Kentucky for a few years. And let me take a look to see where he's at now. Yeah, he's at Utah State now. This is going to be his first year at Utah State. He just got hired there this past season. So we'll see how he does. At one time, he had a reputation as being one of the top, young up and coming offensive minds in college football. But it's crazy how a coach's career can twist and turn. But hey, that's the nature of the beast sometimes. But anyway, as far as this game goes, again, good, sound, multiple playbook. Got a lot of things you can do. You can run from ace, I formation, pistol, and a good selection of shotgun formations. You got Boise State's famous Statue of Liberty play in the game. You got a nice mix of college spread, zone read, and spread West Coast passing game type of stuff going on. Good playbook. And of course, we're going to have Georgia Tech on here. You can't have a listing of unique playbooks and not have Georgia Tech and the Flexbone. You don't get much more unique than that. How much more unique can you get than to have your double slots, hybrid, triple option, run and shoot game? Got a whole bunch of options as far as triple option is concerned, as well as a bevy of double options like the midline option and the trap option, speed option, load option. You got your rocket sweep, your jet sweep, fullback dive, fullback trap. You got a whole bevy of play action pass plays off of that, and in a game that has setup plays, you can very easily get someone open by 15, 20 yards because defenders, they can and will bite on ball fakes in this game. So if you get things cranking on the ground, for example, and run, say, play action switch as a setup play to whatever run play that play is tied to, excellent chance to get someone running right down the middle of the field wide open. Now, the run and shoot influence to this offense was always very interesting. The normal 2x2 base flexbone formation and the double slots run and shoot formation were basically identical. The only difference is that Mouse Davis says instead of using backs in that spot, why not use wide receivers and split them out a little bit wider? So they use the same type of half roll and sprint out passing game that you would find in the flexbone, but incorporated more of a passing game influence to it. And really, both offenses, as far as their origin is concerned, in their passing game, took their cue from a fellow by the name of Glenn Tiger Ellison, who birthed the run and shoot concept of offense way back in the 50s. He was the first one to incorporate the idea of sprinting out your quarterback for a run pass option and having receivers convert their routes on the fly. So what you have 60 some odd years later is this offense, which is this glorious mix of wishbones style triple option football, sprint out passing game, and run and shoot route conversion passing concept. Just a beautiful offense. Paul Johnson is now retired, but you still have that offense being run by the academies, and Georgia Southern has been running that offense for years. So I don't think the offense is going to be disappearing anytime soon. If anything, I keep on hoping and praying that a really good Power 5 team will have the guts to run it one of these days. Because it'll be a hard thing to do. It'll be a hard thing to recruit for in this day and age. But if you put the type of athletes that play at Clemson in that offense, you're going to average 50 plus points a game without question. Not a doubt in my mind. Option football at the college level will always work, and when you can tie that with speed to threaten the perimeter and be able to pass the ball off a play action efficiently down the field, you ain't stopping it. It would be 90s Nebraska all over again. But anyway, on the Middle Tennessee State. Middle Tennessee State is interesting. It's an air raid playbook, but it has as many spread option concepts as it does air raid. It's by far the weirdest air raid playbook in that regard. You got your traditional air raid stuff mixed with motion, triple and double options, and jet sweeps, and slot receivers sweep options, play action shot plays, QB keepers, wildcat, combined with your normal shallow crosses, your Y cross, smash, stick, bubble screen, tunnel screen, and everything that you'd expect to see in an air raid playbook. And their style of air raid really came to fruition back when they had a quarterback by the name of Dwight Dasher. This was back in, I want to say, 2009, 2010. Dwight Dasher was a guy who was a hell of an athlete, could really run, but he wasn't a really efficient passer. he was something like barely a 50% passer. If you can barely crack 50% in an air raid scheme, you really cannot throw. But the dude could run like nobody's business. And Tony Franklin was the OC at the time. So what they did was they basically meshed their passing concepts with more of an emphasis on running downhill out of the shotgun and pistol, and running a whole bunch of QB keepers and zone reads. And as a result, Dasher ended up just lighting up the Sun Belt Conference. He passed for about 2,800 yards, threw for close to 30 touchdowns, ran for 1,100 yards, and had another 10 touchdowns or so, accounted for nearly 40 touchdowns. They had their most successful season in school history, and I think they won a bowl game that year too. It was really a classic case of a coach not being stubborn and being smart enough to tweak his offensive philosophy to fit his quarterback. He didn't have a guy who was the best pure thrower on the face of the earth, but he's the best you got, so what do? You tweak your offense to fit the guy to get the most out of him. That's what good coaches do, and he's the OC still there to this day. Mississippi State. Dan Mullen was there for quite some time, did really well there. He's now the head man at Florida. He's a former Urban Meyer coordinator. His offense certainly maintains that influence. This is basically wishbone football out of a shotgun formation, this playbook here. You got a bevy of options that you can run with tail motion, both load option, speed option, triple option, from either split back or shotgun ace or shotgun 11 personnel. You got it all over the place. You can pitch the ball outside to your HB off that halfback toss play. You got a lot of formations where your tight end is basically a glorified fullback lead blocker. He's basically your modern H-back type. You got your wing T style tail motion there, where the fly motion is being run as either a decoy or as a ball carrier or as a pitch man on the option. This is run downhill football out of the gun. Run it first, run it second. When your opponent plays single high, you bomb it over their heads. A lot of HB offset to get you that good, dive downhill power running game between the tackles. And again, you see there the jet sweeps and the option jet motion and the play action off of that. You got your screens and your play action passes off your dive, your power read, your buck sweep. And you'll notice the drop back passing game is very much vertical, very much downfield. A lot of deep corner routes, square end routes, deep post routes, sideline flood concept. It's basic Urban Meyer power spread football. Pound them, pound them, pound them. Throw and you get them playing man one. Recruit a bunch of really fast wide receivers that can run away from folks. That's what Ohio State does. That's what Dan Mullen will do at Florida. Didn't quite have the resources to get that kind of player at Mississippi State. He had to get the diamonds in the rough of the world, but that's how the offense works. Both their passing games, both Urban's and Mullen's passing games, have become a little bit more dynamic in recent years. I mean, you saw Dwayne Haskins have a spectacular year throwing the football at Ohio State. And again, one of the things that you have to keep in mind with a spread offense is that the QB is not going to be much of a threat as a runner. The parts around him have to be stronger, and a program like Ohio State, they have the studs to do that between their backs and receivers. They have a freaking assembly line of them. At a program like Mississippi State, you need the Dak Prescotts of the world who you can hammer, as well as use your backs in the running game and then have your chunk plays off the play action pass game. Nick Fitzgerald, the same type of quarterback. All of Dan Mullen's quarterbacks at Mississippi State tended to be the same type of guy. Sturdy guys who can run and run between the tackles if need be. And if you have a guy like Dak Prescott who's good enough to get drafted in the NFL, you have a guy who can throw you 30 touchdowns while rushing for 800 yards. Oklahoma might be the best playbook in this game. So much you can do out of this bad boy. This is, I think, the prototypical modern college offense. Multiple formations, concept overlap, and a perfect blend of air raid style passing concepts, pro style concepts, play action shot plays, wide receiver screen game, multifaceted run game between zone runs, gap runs, jet sweeps, and the dual threat zone read game. Just a great, great playbook. Only a matter of time before Lincoln Riley goes to the NFL, I think, and then depending on how Cliff Kingsbury performs, you'll have the NFL looking more and more like the Big 12, which it pretty much does already. It's amazing how it used to be that the NFL game, when you had a quarterback going from, or a coach going from college to the NFL, they had to learn the NFL game. It's now pretty much backwards, where the NFL is incorporating more and more of the college game, looks more and more like the college game, so you have coaches and quarterbacks who are being drafted who may not have been top picks 15, 20 years ago, or coaches who may not have been hired 15, 20 years ago. If you had a quarterback like Kyler Murray, who was, 5'9", 5'10", coming out in the mid 90s, there's no way he goes in the first round, or let alone the first overall pick. He probably doesn't get picked until the late rounds, if at all. But now you have a league that has a rule set that fits his skill set, that fits the style of offense he's been running since high school, and you got a coach who's willing to commit to it. And I cannot wait to see how it all flows together. It's just going to be a matter of whether Kingsbury has the leadership skills and the ability to be a leader of men, so to speak, to handle the pro game. Basically, can he do what Chip Kelly couldn't? Chip Kelly's problems wasn't X's and O's, it wasn't schematics. It was the fact that he ticked off all of his players. When you gave him the power to make personnel moves, you saw a guy who thought he was a star. No, Chip, in the NFL, the players wield a whole heck of a lot of power than a 19, 20-year-old kid does. You ship off talented guys who are popular in the locker room and are productive on the field, you're going to lose the locker room and have a mutiny on your hands. That's, I think, the number one thing to watch with Kingsbury. I think game planning, X's and O's, schematics, he's going to be just fine. The question is, can he manage a team? Can he motivate grown men? And that we don't know. We don't really know too much about him because he hasn't really been coaching for that long. And his results at Texas Tech have been, sideways. So again, really interesting to see how that all plays out. And that's a good segue into Oregon, the Chip Kelly college offense. And looking through this, I forgot how different the Ncaa version of his offense was and the Madden one. For whatever reason, both in terms of plays as well as how the differences between the way the game executes them. For whatever reason, this was the last time EA Sports has been able to replicate this offense, the spread offense, well. As far as spacing, as far as execution, as far as routes being able to be run smoothly. For whatever reason, it's been a hot mess since this game. The Madden 20 beta is the best this style of football has felt since NCAA 14. And, going back to Chip Kelly, say what you want about the guy as far as his ability to, or his talent for alienating his players. The guy is a football pioneer. He revolutionized the college game. He, alongside of Rich Rodriguez, Brian Kelly, Steve Spurrier, Rick Neuheisel, Joe Tiller, Mike Leach, Mouse Davis, these are the guys that revolutionized spread football. Their fingerprints are all over all levels of football now, from high school all the way up to the NFL. He deserves his fair share of credit for that. And I'm glad he's back in college. I think college is where he belongs. Some guys are just college coaches. I think guys like Dabo Swinney, for example, he knows what he is. He knows where his bread is buttered. Mike Leach, same way. Mike Leach in the pro game would be like, well, maybe not now, but could you imagine Mike Leach in the pro game 20 years ago? It'd be square peg, round hole. In basketball, Coach K, he knows where he fits. John Calipari, same way. He had a stint in the NBA, it didn't go very well. and he hasn't been back since. I don't think he wants to go back. So yeah, the Chip Kelly O, the Ducky. Tempo, 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 zone read, zone read, zone read. Then outside zone, then buck sweep, then dart, then counter option, some play action here and there, some motion option here and there, wide receiver screens, for verts, Y cross, and that's pretty much it. And again, you can be simple like that when you're playing at 5,000 miles an hour and you got a bunch of track stars all over the field. The downside of his system is that it's similar to Gus Malzahn in that it's a sequence offense. So much of the offense is predicated on conflicting defenders in the inside and outside zone run game. If you can defend that reasonably well, the whole thing tends to fall apart because the drop back pass game just isn't there. If you can keep this style of offense in a down and distance where play action is less likely to fool you, that's where Chip's system has historically had issues, and he had to go to the NFL to finally modernize his passing game. Because in the NFL, you're just not going to run by people very often. Everyone can run, so your quarterback has to be able to make consistent progression reads as a drop back passer. That's the big difference. The athletic advantages that you see at the college level week to week are so much wider. In the NFL, those athletic advantages shrink drastically. Anyhow, SMU, and I really forgot how much better this run and shoot playbook is than the Madden one. I mean, oh my goodness. When I started paging through it, I just got irritated as all hell. What happened to flanker close and flanker close weak? What happened to the 11 personnel? This is the modern run and shoot. This is what Hawaii runs now and how June played it toward the end of SMU. What he did was he brought in Hal Mummy, the air raid godfather, and jet sweep, mid-screen. I mean, my God, flanker hook, slot outs. Where are these plays in the Madden Run and Shoot playbook? Mid-screen. Jeez. But anyway, what June did around this time period was he brought in Hal Mummy and they mixed air raid principles in the run and shoot offense. H shallow cross, Z shallow cross, these motion Y corners, Y stick, and scissors concepts that are not in the Madden playbook, Madden run and shoot playbook. I don't know why. Why did they take these out? Why? I'm just getting irritated just seeing it. But as I was saying, they started incorporating. But anyway, they started incorporating move tight ends, both inline and split out, and it just gave you a walking mismatch. Why not use a 6'3 to 6'5 guy who weighs 230 to 40 pounds that can body corners, run by backers, run routes just as well as your slot receiver, give you better blocking on the perimeter on your run game, shotgun run game, and be a nice security blanket for your quarterback. Slot option with that nasty corner post route, Jesus. Gambler, that's not in the Madden Run and Shoot playbook either. So much stuff missing. Deep attack, not there. Split end options, not there. I can go on and on and on. But anyway, that mingling of the air raid and run and shoot, June retired before he could see it through. They had a miserable season the year after they started dabbling in this, and he just kind of cut cord and quit, which was, not the best look on the face of the earth. And Hawaii, they brought back the run and shoot last year. The run and shoot 2.0 modernized with the RPO game, and again using a dynamic Y in spots, and they had a really good season. Started out great. Their defense fell apart toward the middle of the season. They lost like 3 or 4 games in a row. They gave up 49, 40, 50, and 56 points. Ended up finishing 5-3 in their division in the Mountain West, 8-6 overall. Got to a bowl game. That was their best season in years. Cole McDonald had a pretty good season. He had something like 3,800 passing yards. He had, let me look it up, 36 TDs against 10 INTs. Kind of hit a snag in the middle of the season during that losing streak. Didn't have the greatest completion percentage in the world, only 58.9%. But, the run and shoot works. It always has, and it always will. Stanford. Stanford runs one of the... Stanford is like a Back to the Future offense. In this era of tempo and spread, Stanford goes the other way. Multiple tight ends, under center, bludgeon you to death, big, tall, physical wide receivers that can bully your corners, and you're complemented by your classic drop back NFL style West Coast passing game. That's a Stanford offense. If you're someone who just wants to play classic meat and potatoes football, run the ball 25 to 30 times a game, pass the ball around 25 times a game, be efficient, control the flow of the game, control the clock, Stanford's offense is the offense for you. That's the best way to describe it. I don't like to use the term quote unquote pro style offense because it really has no meaning anymore. I also think it's a term that is sometimes used to disparage quarterbacks that, don't fit the old school mold, so to speak. It's also a term that sim Nazis will clutch onto to keep alive a style of football that no longer exists. You'll still, in this day and age, have people bitching about people playing out of the shotgun too much, believe it or not. Stuff like that. Basically, I refer to a quote-unquote pro-style offense as something that's not zone read based, where the quarterback is not a threat or designed to be a threat on QB runs or zone read or run pass options. Everything else, for the sake of simplicity, I throw into the spread or multiple style category, unless you're talking about a triple option team like a Service Academy or somebody like that. But yeah, Stanford has a good program. I really, despite the fact that they annoy me because, Notre Dame plays them every year and they play them really well every year, most times, they have a good program. I really like how Stanford runs their program. They're like a West Coast, more successful version of Iowa. They tend to get more athletic, more skilled players than in Iowa or Wisconsin. They just have a better natural geographic recruiting base. But you know what I mean. They don't get the ESPN top, 300 guy all the time. They recruit closer to the level of Notre Dame. They'll get the 4-star guys. They'll get the occasional 5-star guys. And what they want to do is they'll get the 4-star guy who doesn't have a place in the SEC, for example. But they're always incredibly well coached, and they're always tough-nosed, smart players. And as a result, they always have a good, stable, competitive program, and they'll occasionally have a 10, 11 win year when they have a special quarterback, which they occasionally do. But usually they'll win between 8 and 9 games, but they're very seldom just a dumpster fire. And, they don't use their academic standards as an excuse for not being able to get, the players and the volume that a USC could, for example, which Notre Dame, keeping it real, I love my Fighting Irish, but Notre Dame does play that game. They want to recruit with Alabama and Clemson, but when they don't get the same number of players of the same quality as the Alabama or Clemson, they'll fall back on their academics as a reason why, which is garbage. It's a bad look when they do it. They look petty whenever they, fall on the academic standards card. If you want to play that game, be Northwestern or be Duke and go 6-6, 7-5 every year, and maybe have a 10-win season every 5 years when you have a redshirt senior quarterback. But anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. But yeah, as you can see here, paging through this playbook, you're not going to see a lot of flashy stuff. You do have a wildcat formation there, but you're just going to have just solid meat and potatoes, pro-style football. Wyoming. What can I say about Wyoming? This playbook is mental. You want to spread the field? You can spread the field in abundance out of this sucker. This playbook, and you'll see why when we get towards the bottom, this playbook reminds me, have you seen the movie Varsity Blues? And you know that fictitious offense that they made up, the oop to oop, where they run 5 wide, no huddle all the time toward the end of the movie? This playbook reminds me of that offense. It has about 5 empty and 5 wide sets. And a game where you can go no huddle pretty seamlessly, you can spend an entire game in empty or five wide in tempo, base out of that, and still be able to run your spread stuff as well, depending on what personnel package you have. If you have your empty base, you can start out in empty, no huddle out of that, and go to spread wise slot, doubles, and all that good stuff. And if you have the itch to go five wide, you have like 4 5 wide sets. So you can spread the field sideline to sideline with a bevy of weapons. Very vertical passing style of playbook. It's a really, really unique book. The only offense that I can think of that this reminds me of is the Braille system. Use the whole width and length of the field in abundance, but doesn't have the same type of running game options out of that type of system. But the beauty of their empty and five wide sets is that you're not trapped into just throwing. You can run either a QB ISO or QB inside zone, a load option, a motion read option, or a jet sweep, or all the above in the same formations. So someone just can't, pass commit you and drop everybody back into coverage. They have to be able to defend the run too. Here's the five wide bunch, which is just a glorious set. You got all kinds of goodies there. Empty spread. You got your QB draw, QB blast, motion load option, jet sweep, motion zone read. Five wide. QB blast again. Motion wide receiver option again. Jet sweep, play action jet sweep. Five wide trips. I mean, there's just so many ways that you can spread the field. And then empty quads. It's just crazy. If you really want to go in the center, you do have one ace big twin set that you can use. If you want to just run out the clock or in short yardage, and you also have 2 wildcat sets, trips over and wings. Just a nutty playbook. That's an awful lot of fun. So that's it for part 1, and we'll go over 10 more in part 2. Hope you guys enjoyed. Talk to you all later. Peace.